So, Ken, we had 3 gang members jailed last month in connection with what people will know. It's basically defrauding ATM machines, blocking them and taking the money. But this, I suppose, it exposes a wider sort of section of organised crime that's going on in this country that maybe doesn't get the same amount of attention as others. What do we know about this criminal gang? Because that's what they are.
Yeah, and that's what they've pleaded guilty to as well, Niall. They've pleaded guilty to very serious charges, all 3. They're all Romanian nationals, and they've pleaded guilty to participating in an organised crime gang. It's an offence that has a maximum sentence of 14 years in jail.
Yeah.
So in effect, what these 3 individuals were doing, and gardaí actually suspect there was a 4th individual who's never been identified that was working with them as well. They were involved in a fraudulent scheme known as cash trapping.
Yeah.
This involves, it's if you see these devices, they look very, very basic, but they're placed in an ATM, and when a customer attempts to withdraw, let's say hypothetically €50, that money does not come out. It gets trapped in the machine. The customer walks away. The gang are kind of waiting nearby. They go back to the ATM when they feel it's safe to do so, and they retrieve the cash.
So they basically put up a fake front often, isn't it? And the money comes out but doesn't go through that front. And then at the end of the day, maybe, or a couple of times a day, they go back and collect all the money. It was really common, I suppose, a number of years ago. Probably less ATMs being used now than there once was.
Yes, because I suppose what's significant within this particular case, there was the 3 individuals pleaded guilty to carrying out this type of crime on 43 separate ATMs. They were all AIB ATMs.
Yeah.
And the cash that was yielded from it was slightly over €6,000, which is not a huge amount of money, really.
No.
And the damage that was caused to the cash machines was actually more significant. That was well over €18,500.
So we're talking about small sums of money there in criminal terms, but it's what you get when you look behind those figures, I suppose, that this is an organised crime gang, not just involved in ATM theft, but also links to organised prostitution and other types of, I suppose, fraud as well. And I suppose what we're seeing is there's these specialist gangs, really, aren't they? And they kind of move around Europe to an extent, and Ireland has become a focus of a lot of this money, and it's a big issue for the guards, isn't it? In terms of this is a big part of the criminal enterprises in this country.
Yes, it most certainly is. But in relation to 2 of the 3 defendants that pleaded guilty in relation to this scam and to the organised crime charges, it was telling that there was convictions were mentioned both in the UK and Germany. So it absolutely backs up your point that these are gangs that actually travel all around Europe, all around the EU in particular.
Yeah, because although it's probably not too sophisticated, so they do rely on sort of moving around and not hanging around in the one place. Now, the 3rd guy that was caught with them, he actually wasn't. The other 2 were seen on CCTV. They approached the ATMs, took off whatever the trapping device and collected the money. But there was a 3rd guy who was arrested in a car, I think ultimately in Stillorgan. And he's maybe regarded as being a more serious criminal figure.
Yes, his name is, you might need to excuse my pronunciation, but okay. His name is Ken Foy.
Yeah.
And the gardaí, and this was an investigation that was led by the Garda National Economic Crime Bureau, who've taken a very proactive measures in the last number of years in relation to these type of gangs. But anyway, this particular individual would be described as the ringleader, kind of the influencer on the other 2 individuals. Now, he is interested in his own right. The fact that he pleaded guilty to those organised crime charges the other week made him the very first person in Ireland to be convicted of organised crime charges in relation to 2 completely separate cases, separate offences.
Yeah.
Previously served 4.5 years for a money laundering offence. that on that particular occasion, he was going around opening a large number of bank accounts for an international organised crime gang using fake IDs and so on like that.
Yeah.
So he got 4.5 years for that.
And that was connected, wasn't it, with these texts that probably every single person in the country has received at some stage, saying something along the lines, your bank account needs to be updated or there's a suspicious transaction on your account.
Yes. In fact, in that first case, the one he got 4.5 years for, one of the victims was a pregnant woman who lost €9,000 in one of those particular scams. Now, Cinti, again, my pronunciation might be the best, is not suspected of being the person organising those scams. But what he was doing in that particular occasion was he was setting up bank accounts so that the money that had been stolen in those scams could be lodged and laundered as such.
And basically probably taken out of the country ultimately.
Ultimately, and in the particular case of that pregnant woman, now he was sentenced for these offences back in 2021, but in the case of that woman, he was actually caught on CCTV removing money that had been stolen in particular from her. I think it was around €9,000.
And it seems like remarkably easy the way he was doing it. It was just setting up these bank accounts, because it is quite difficult, isn't it? Like he was just using, changing his name slightly and all of that. And they have to do it as well, don't they? Because of any large transaction will spark a kind of an alert. So they have to keep doing it again and again.
Yeah, and that's why I suppose it sparks a red flag when kind of large amounts of money or suspicious amounts of money go into a bank account. The thing about this individual, I was in the court myself the other week, Niall, and he's very clean cut.
Yeah.
He looks, you could say, he almost looks like an Irishman in the sense that he's someone that you could imagine that would not attract suspicion.
Yeah.
In his first dealings with whatever bankers he's dealing with when he's opening up these bank accounts.
Yeah, but he despite how he looks, he had an extensive criminal history. We did hear, where was it over 100 convictions ultimately, and as you said, it's spread across the continent.
124, I think it was. Most of them are in Ireland, and in fairness to him, most are for minor offences. The big one is obviously that organised crime offence. But there's no doubt about it, he's been in custody now since he was arrested. He was made sure never to be caught on CCTV like the two other culprits who were effectively going up and down to the bank machine. He was only caught in that undercover operation out in Stillorgan that led to the demise of this gang. That was the first time he'd been actually identified.
Yeah.
So at an early stage, he has taken a plea to another separate organised crime charge. And the reality is he's probably facing a fairly hefty sentence despite his guilty plea.
Yeah. So these guys, this is all, they targeted, was it 27 ATMs? Is it?
I think it could be 47, Niall, but it was across 4 counties.
Yeah.
This was in July of last year.
Yeah.
It only went on for 10 days.
Yeah.
But the counties targeted were Dublin, Meath, Kildare and Louth. And it seems within this 10 days, or effectively nights really, is when they operated, they'd go to a particular geographical location. So, for example, when they were in North Dublin, places like Malahide, Santry, Raheny would be hit all on the same night. And same as when they went down towards Kildare and then into Meath, they went into towns like Naas, Maynooth, Trim, Kells, always targeting ATMs from the same bank.
Yeah. Now, of course, we're old men writing about crime for a long time, and I suppose both of our careers have been about drug dealing, really, haven't they? And I suppose the generation before us spent a lot of time writing about armed robberies, which are certainly on those major scaled armed robberies are far less. Will the younger generation, this of crime reporters coming up, will internet fraud be what become their bread and butter? Because, there was a report there just a couple of weeks ago from Europol, and it's, a large chunk of it is about internet fraud. And I suppose the money that can be made is staggering. I mean, it's a huge issue for the gardaí, isn't it? It's a huge focus of their work.
It's absolutely massive. And I think it's really since the times of COVID that we've seen such an increase in all these organised frauds, but also a massive clampdown by gardaí on a number of gangs that are operating here. It's an interesting thing there, Niall, where you brought up about drug dealing. And a very senior detective said to me, it's a number of years ago, and he was saying that essentially, to paraphrase him, like, fraud is absolutely massive. The gains that can be made in this are so big. The figures in relation to some of the international gangs are actually eye-watering, but the sanctions, the jail sentences that your typical person involved in these type of offences, notwithstanding people that are pleading now obviously to organised crime, they're far less than what the average person, the average drug dealer gets if he's caught with, let's say, the hypothetical €100,000 worth of coke or whatever.
Yeah, but not even 100,000, because even in law, there's a mandatory sentence for over 13,000 euros worth of drugs. And if you're caught with, 15,000 euros worth of cannabis, you really are going to go to prison for a few years, almost inevitably. Obviously, the fraud ones, a lot of suspended sentences, I suppose. But what we are seeing the last couple of years, the level of organisation, there's obviously individuals up to, little scams, but there is also these transnational crime gangs that are using Ireland as a base. In particular, the Black Axe gang, who you've been writing about now extensively for a couple of years.
There's no doubt that it has been a big base for them, but that particular bureau we mentioned has made huge inroads to have an operation. It's codenamed Operation Skeen. As part of that, over 100 people, and this is at the more senior level, have been arrested in relation to organised crime offences.
Yeah.
But there's been literally, and this is countrywide, from Donegal to Wexford, Dublin to Cork, there's literally been hundreds of money mules who have been arrested. These are people who have let their accounts be used by the organisation. They're often young people who recruited on things like Snapchat and these kind of things. Again, the gain they're getting is very, very little. And what's happening is they're being charged with money laundering offences. Now, in most cases, these individuals at that level are actually receiving suspended sentences in the court system, often though at the higher level of the circuit court, which is still a criminal conviction.
Oh yeah, and your name will be in the paper and all of that if you're a student. So basically the way they operate is they just say one of these scams, the gang get 100,000 out of it. Then they have to disperse it, really, don't they, to a load of bank accounts. And then once it's dispersed to those bank accounts in Ireland, the money gets transferred out of the country. That's the basic system, is it?
In basics, but what they need is people to control those accounts.
Yeah.
And again, it was a recent court case we saw.
Sadiq Jimo, is it? And again, apologies for the pronunciation.
That's correct. He would have been a mid-ranking member of the Black Axe criminal organisation. To the point he would have managed a large number of money mule accounts. Evidence was given within his sentencing hearing when he got to 6.5 years. Was he was paid something like €26,000 for his involvement in managing around €1 million that had been stolen in a number of various different scams. So he was the one that was controlling money mules.
So he'd recruit them, I suppose, as well. Was he was
funny enough, recruiting is often a different role within the organisation. It's actually a more junior role than what he had.
Yeah.
So as part of the big Garda investigation into him, they managed obviously to seize phones, and they got WhatsApp messages, very compromising ones, where he was basically, I think to paraphrase him, he was suggesting to one of his associates about how the fact that what they were at was easy money.
Yeah. Well, it didn't prove to be the case.
No.
So the Black Axe, they're based in Nigeria or originate there, really, aren't they?
They started there, yeah.
But they've now become this sort of global phenomenon.
I think I've seen it stated officially that they're classified as one of, if not the biggest crime organisation in the world. So they have tentacles everywhere, Niall.
Yeah.
All over the world, really.
And so, I mean, they can make, of course, huge amounts of money very quickly with scams. And then they need the mules because, as we said, I think it's 10,000. If there's a transaction of over 10,000, the banks will almost automatically report it to the police. So they just need to scatter it around really and move it out slowly.
Essentially it's a huge network, and what we've seen in this country, a lot of the people that get involved in it, actually as money mules, you'd have to say the vast majority were never known to the gardaí before.
Which is obviously makes them even more attractive.
And some of them, I guarantee you, would never have heard of Black Axe either.
Yeah. So the guards, like the bureau you're talking about, like it must be, it's a kind of a new area really. I know obviously they've existed for a long time, but some of these, the guards have to catch up, I suppose, on the new scams. You know, it takes time and expertise. Are they a well-resourced unit?
I suppose any unit will say that they need more bodies.
Yeah.
Whatever bureau or whatever unit you speak to within the guards say they don't have enough bodies and enough personnel, and the same applies there. Their case, what we have been writing about, I suppose, in the Sunday World as well, a lot over the last number of years, is a number of raids, a number of arrests, and then a number of people being charged. What we're seeing now in the courts, and we've touched on a couple of cases there, but even there's 3 or 4 from this week alone that, again, kind of people connected to Black Axe, up to a middle level that are being dealt with. There's a huge amount of what's happening in the courts now is a huge amount of casework. Yeah. So we're seeing all these court cases kind of catching up on the investigators after all these searches and massive operations, really. So, yeah, they do need more resources. I think it's even, again, being officially said because, as you mentioned earlier, it's a problem that's only... It's a crime. It's a type of crime that's only going to grow and grow.
It is, and if I just read that Europol report, and it is kind of mind blowing how quickly it changes as well. You know how they can adapt very quickly. So, well, no doubt the younger generation will know a lot more about it than we ever do.
I think that's correct, Niall.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll come back to it again.
Thanks.
Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.